producer. The executive producer at Drama Republic, Brenman. Producer Colin Wratten. Actor Steve Wall. Actor Stephen Rea. Actor Tom Hughes. Costume designer Phoebe the Gay. Production designer Chris Root. Director of photography Arno Val-Colmer. Composer Federico Husic. And casting director Sam Jones. Hugo, over to you.
Well, just very quickly, I wanted to take the opportunity to first thank all my colleagues for making this horse opera with me, and then simply to thank you, the audience that came here today, because it'll be the first time that we've shown it to anyone, so you're the first to see it. Fingers crossed you enjoy it. You better like a Western. So, without ado, let's go for it.
We'll see you afterwards. Enjoy.
What are you doing, Emily? You enjoy the show. Yeah, we will.
Congratulations on a stunning piece of work. Hugo, I'd like to start by asking why you were interested in making a Western. What was it about the genre that appealed?
I hope some of the answer is on the screen that you've just seen. I think it was Jimmy Stewart said that the Western is the purest cinematic form that you can engage with. And I suppose that's true, because it's about individuals in landscape, and the bigger the landscape, the greater the pressure upon these individuals, so the psychology builds. And that is our greatest interest. I think it's elemental. It's about landscape and light and people.
And the Western is rubbing up against a sort of different genre, against the love story, against the sort of
You're right, it's true. The unusual nature of this particular piece is that most cowboy pictures are revenge-driven. That's the kind of motivation, at least the ones that I really like. And then there's another kind of genre, and that's the epic kind of love story piece. That's kind of unusual for the Western to engage with. So there are two things driving at the same time, and that's what I think makes the thing at least unique in some way.
And Emily, you came on board quite early, I think. And what was it about it that resonated for you, and how closely did you work with Hugo creatively?
Well, I just found it completely heart-stopping when I started to read it. I think I knew in my heart I was doing it after page 2. It was so rare, it was so singular, and I was aware in this first episode that I just had no idea what was coming next. And you look for that. Things are usually contorting or conforming to some sort of ideal, you know, and this wasn't in any way. And I remember reading when Kieran Hines' character punches me very hard in the face, and I just thought, well, all bets are off now. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. And it moves like a chase thriller, and yet it is so tender at its heart. So I'd never read anything that managed to thread that needle like that.
And Cornelia is such a fascinating, sort of contradictory, complex character, sort of so naive and entitled, very modern. Can you talk a little bit about sort of finding her?
Sure. I mean, he wrote, Hugo Blick wrote a very colourful character, and one that was surprising at every turn. I mean, she has suffered great loss, and yet there's a sort of guilelessness, a hopefulness to her. I think she is innocent without being naive, but she certainly has a lot to learn from Eli. Thank God he's there, because she would have been done for without him, you know. But I think even though she seems ill-prepared for the journey ahead, you will see when you see more of it, she is better prepared than she even realised.
And Chaske, can you tell us a little bit about finding your way into the character of Eli and sort of perhaps what kind of research you did?
The research, well, it's all in the writing. Hugo gave me a really good map to where I could go with the character. And the research I did was, they gave me the Pawnee and also the history of the Pawnee and the Scout. But at the end of the day, I had to make it my own. So I ventured on in another direction. Started talking to a lot of war vets and stuff to help get me into more of that, into that space. And a lot of music helped me out.
And that haircut.
And the haircut,
That was
yes.
like transformative.
Yes, the wardrobe. When I showed up on the day when we were doing the wardrobe, I finally, when we put everything together, I finally felt Eli came together at that, and the hair and everything. And it wasn't until really when we started working on the set. I never really know. I show up on the day going a certain direction, but you just can't really rely on that because there's so many elements going on. And I was very blessed and lucky that I had Hugo and Emily there, kind of guiding along. And it just gave me the confidence, and also just to really try to, I guess, get into what Hugo created with Eli. And it was fun. I mean, it's a meaty, really heavy part, but those are the best parts.
It was interesting that, in fact, we rarely went beyond 3 takes on any of your performance, and I was struck by watching it again, just how spontaneous the whole thing is between the two of you, and how rarely I had to do anything. Yeah. Really, I just had to turn up and take well, really, I had to work out where the camera should go, but it was wonderful to be reminded about how spontaneous it was. It was never a hard thing for either of those performances to dig them out. They were just present.
And Greg, you've worked with Hugo a number of times before on An Honourable Woman and Black Earth Rising. And of course this. Are you able, all very different shows, are you able to sort of identify a sort of through line in Hugo's work?
Yeah, we started working together in 2013. And he always goes to such extreme places, and his stories are often told through a very kind of brutal prism. But as Emily was saying, there's extraordinary tenderness and really, really textured emotional journeys. And they're often set against these sort of big landscapes, not only sort of physical landscapes, but sort of geopolitical landscapes, in which the kind of, I guess that the kind of the foreground micro story feeds into the macro story, and I always come away feeling that I've learned so much, actually. So thank you for that. I've learned about Israel and Palestine, and post-genocidal Rwanda, and now the formation of this important stage in modern America. But always surprising, always exciting.
And I think it's fair to say that the Western hasn't always, it doesn't have a glorious history of the way it's depicted Native American characters. And having Eli Whip sort of front and centre, how deliberate was that, Hugo?
Yeah, it was completely a deliberate choice. I think when I was a young man, I was in Montana, and I kind of saw the last parts of the West, that kind of Wild West feel, and both the positives, there are many, and many of the negatives, and they're often attached to Native communities. And I knew it was a story, I wanted to make a Western, most filmmakers do, but I think it was a Western that had to smuggle its politics. But, I hope that Chaske wouldn't mind me saying, but just having Chaske's name above the title in a Western as this does, and made a very clear point of both Emily and I were very certain to ensure that, is a political gesture just in itself. And that is surprising in 2022 that that gesture still needs to be made. And indeed, a Native American playing a Native American, and no less the romantic lead, as it were, in a traditional mainstream Western, is still has hen's teeth rare, if not very unique.
And you, you mentioned politics, and I couldn't help but, when I was watching it, it feels incredibly resonant, and it feels like it speaks very clearly and loudly to where we are today, both in terms of what's happening in America, but also, a sort of post-imperial, sort of post-Brexit Britain. And was that something that was deliberate, or is that something that we are sort of reading into it in this particular year?
No, it's there. It's the English being, the first treaty signed with the native peoples was a treaty with King George, late 1700s or early mid 1700s, and it was for 60 English miles. Our imperial journey was strong, waned, and was ugly on its wane. And it's continued to wane across this time. And in our media, if I'll just say that, we're going to, the week in the UK when this show comes out, it's the same week as The Crown, I think. And it's interesting to see the two things. One's called The Crown, one's called The English. And, I'll leave it to others to make that clear. But I might suggest that The Crown, for whatever criticism and whatever it wants to be, it is essentially a celebration of monarchy and our position in the world because of it. And The English is an exploration of its costs.
We've got time for a couple of audience questions. If anyone has anything, one on the front row here. If you just, we've got a mic that's just coming down from the back. Just hold on 1 second.
I'm a socialist. I live in London. I'm a social historian from Wyoming. And I'm wondering what historians, if any, you used in the making of this. Historians.
Oh, good. Yes, so when the scripts were completed, I sent them to an organization called Illuminative, which you might have heard of. It's Illuminative. It's a racial and social justice organization run by for native justice, run by a woman called Crystal Echohawk, and she happens to be Pawnee. They are a powerful pressure group, in fact, because they managed to change the Washington football team to change their name, so their presence within American community society is quite well known. And they went through the scripts with me and recognized what was trying to be said, and then also introduced me to Pawnee and Cheyenne specialist advisors, each of whom were either cultural or military specialists in their spheres. And then we went through the scripts granularly on their knowledge and instruction.
Any other questions? Okay, I would love to ask you about whether there were any particular films or particular influences that you drew on, or things that you watched when in preparation for this.
Yeah, I don't want to hark on it too much, but I will just say one of the best pictures that sort of lit my boat was Martin Ombre, a film that's from 1967, starring Paul Newman as a discovered white kid amongst the Apache Nation. And it's got a really interesting political aspect to it. I think it's a fine picture. But even Newman himself said, well, it might have been better if the representation of the story was from a native perspective. Even though the story had many things that were politically right to say. And I guess, that was I took him to heart in that. And again, why Chaske's character is as he is.
And finally, Greg, one of the things that struck me the most is just how beautiful it looks on screen, the landscape. Where was it shot?
We shot it in and around Madrid, in Spain. And we, to be honest with you, we did budget shooting in Albuquerque, and it didn't make sense. We looked at Canada, it didn't make sense, and it made every bit of sense to shoot in Madrid and around, because, I mean, as you can see, the landscapes are fantastic. And in terms of adding to its beauty, we have the most brilliant crews that Hugo can talk about in terms of our director of photography. And
yeah, I know about Colin, who's here this evening. Fantastic work. I'm not going to begin the journey of every increment of the involvement of the crew, except to say that it was like an engine that really, it doesn't always happen, and it happened here, where it completely meshed everybody's contribution: costume, hair, makeup, sound, composer, Federico Husset is here as well. All of these elements, Steve Robinson, the first AD, who just drove our schedule through at fantastic pace. I mean, all of these individuals contributed to the whole engine. And in the end, there was an interesting aspect that Kimberly Guerrero actually commented on when she was watching, witnessing it. She said, you know, I'm not sure we would have made that picture the way you're making it here, she said, in the States. I think it could only really be made, she said, there's too much blood on the floor to make that picture there. And she said, doing it here is so fascinating, because really, the craftsmen and all of us that were involved in it, we were making it from the kernel of where the trouble began, Spain. And it meant a lot, I think, to all of the crew and to that cast member who spoke to it, that we were doing that. So I think it did make a collective, particularly European view, but something was very special about that, and I think that's on the screen.
can I just add to that? At the heart of the crew was a brilliant producer, Colin Wratten, who Dan Colin really kept it together. Also, just to thank the Drama Republic, Susie Liddell, Bella Wright, and Dennis Rose. And also, final thanks to Amazon, BBC, and our distributor, all three.
Just to say, the English lands on BBC Two on the 10th of November and on iPlayer. Please join me in thanking Hugo and Chaske